Most of her videos don't get any views, but the ones where she lifts her shirt up and asks to be rated has 250,000 views. And what that does, right, it normalizes the behavior. It rewards it.
Imagine being 10 years old, having the internet tell you that you are ugly, grown men telling you that you're ugly. It's shocking.
The design is addictive. There's no safety measures to protect kids. And then when you approach the company about this, they really are like, most kids have a great time. And they have the most amazing PR machine in the world. Think about what they can accomplish as a company technically, like virtual reality, AI. But their negligence when it comes to kid stuff, it's the product design that's really, really harming our kids. It's a pile of broken promises. Don't think for even a moment that this will not happen to your kids.
Kia ora and welcome to One Young Mind podcast. It's a fact that our young people live in an increasingly addictive digital world, and whilst that world can bring a lot of positives, what exactly are the risks? I'm Matilda Green, content creator, presenter and mother of three.
And I'm Dr. Manish Deva, paediatrician. This podcast discusses mental health issues, self-harm and suicide, so please listen with care. If you or someone you love is struggling, please reach out to a professional for help. Helpline numbers can be found in the show notes of this podcast.
Welcome, Arturo.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
We are very pleased to have you on the podcast. I know you're a very busy man, so we really appreciate your time. When you were at Meta from 2009 to 2015, correct me if I'm wrong there, you led the Protect and Care group, which was site integrity, security infrastructure, care tools, child safety. Could you walk us through what that role entailed?
Yeah, so during that time, I managed the teams that did engineering, product, user research, data science. If you think about all of the facets that go into an area of the company, I was the manager for everything having to do with protecting, so stopping people from hacking into other people's accounts, and helping people navigate difficult moments. So things like suicide prevention, bullying, all these other things, all the way through to like safety tools for kids, things to prevent grooming and pedophiles. And so kind of all of the bad stuff that could happen to you on Facebook was what the team was responsible for. And it reported directly to the chief technology officer who reported to Mark Zuckerberg. And so it was the sort of the highest person in charge of that from around 250 million active users to 1.2 billion active users.
That's quite a few. That is quite a few. Okay, so you left Meta and then you later returned in 2019 as a consultant. So what made you come back?
So I left, and then my daughter turned first 13 and started asking when she could go on Instagram, and then 14, and that's when she went on Instagram. And soon thereafter, I started hearing about her having bad experiences on there, like unsolicited penis pictures and harassment, stuff that should never happen in the first place. Mm-hmm. And when I asked her about it, she felt there was nothing she could do, that she tried to do things in the product and none of them helped. And that was one of the reasons that I went back in particular to work in Instagram in what's called the well-being team, which focused on these issues. And it was to see about her experience. But of course, I knew that one kid's experience is a doorway to millions of kids' experiences, and that's always been part of the work.
And so, Arturo, you're in a unique position, being very high up in the social media corporate structure and also having a child. What were your insights about how that worked from the inside, being in the social media industry itself? Were they aware of these issues for young people online?
Yeah, that was what I found at the end of my second stint, the one where I went on Instagram, is that there was a sort of breathtaking amount of harm, staggering, happening to young people on Instagram. Things like 1 in 5 feeling worse about themselves because of things they were getting from Instagram, 1 in 8 getting unwanted sexual advances, 1 in 5 getting exposed to unwanted sexual content or violent content, 1 in 3 for hate. And so there were the numbers were, when you multiply, right, there are hundreds of millions of teenagers. The numbers are incredible. And so I brought those to the attention of both Adam Mosseri, who runs Instagram, and Mark Zuckerberg, who runs Meta, that was very familiar with. And in a nutshell, it turns out that they did know these numbers and were choosing to not act on them.
Why do you think that was or is? Why do you think they weren't acting on that?
I think that by their actions, they just don't seem to care about the well-being of youth and the harm that youth experiences in order to invest in it the way they do in everything else, right? I mean, for everything else, there's this very good top-level metrics, how much time you spend using everything, how many users you have that do this. I mean, there's all of this measurement that they do as a company. And when it comes to harm, the measurements that they've been putting out as a company are either very misleading, like dangerously so, or they talk about safety tools in terms of number of tools and not number of kids, which doesn't make any sense.
Those numbers are staggering. 20% experiencing awful online interactions. What do you think most parents are unaware of? Are they aware of how frequently this harm is happening for young people?
No, I think most parents don't know that the moment that you hand your kid your phone and you allow them to go on social media, that and if you think about these odds, right? Like would you send your kid to a school that you knew that 1 in 8 kids got sexually harassed or worse, right? Would you send your kids to a school that 1 in 5 got exposed to unwanted sexual content? That to them is distressing, right? And so the parents don't know how likely it is that their kids are going to be encountering this. And when you talk to kids, they're like, yeah, I mean, this is so many studies from years ago to this last summer. The numbers are all the same. And you ask the kids and they feel distressed about the bad experiences and powerless against them. And there is good, but the main thing, one of the most, I think, awful things that Meta has done as a way of managing this conversation is they say, if more kids experience good than harm, then it's a net positive. And it's like saying, okay, 10 kids have a good day, 5 die. Well, 5 kids had a good day. But that's what they say every time they say these things in their press releases. And so Meta has been very aggressively pushing peace of mind for parents with teen accounts and other tools that they've put out, ads everywhere. But the ground truth is not that. The ground truth is that kids will experience these harmful things. The company doesn't acknowledge it. And as a result of that, like, our kids are exposed and most parents don't know and can't be expected to reasonably know.
Arturo, you sent us some research videos to have a look at ahead of this podcast, and they were screen recordings of you setting up a teen account, is that right? And some of the content was really quite shocking. I was watching it last night and I said to my husband, I don't think I can actually watch much more of this. This is really horrific. And that was with sensitive content filters on. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you saw just signing up as a normal teen on Instagram?
Yeah, so we created these accounts for the 14, 13-year-old boys and girls, focused on the girls primarily, and then just started browsing Instagram with all of the default protections on and parental controls enabled, like just to see what that experience was like. And when it came to sensitive content controls, there were like many things we found, but the two that stick out the most to me is like, you get violent content, you get all, and I don't know if you watched the video with the broken bones.
Yes, I did. Horrible.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the thing is that's what parents need to see, because even though it's distressing for us to watch it, that's what their kids are getting, right? I mean, there's a good chance that your kids are getting that content, and if they watch it out of disgust, then as in the video, what you have is 8 videos in a row where you see people breaking bones, falling out of buildings, hitting hard surfaces. There's no blood, it means it doesn't violate meta rules, clearly violent and distressing. And each time I hit their button that says, I'm not interested in this, and The next video is another violent video. I'm not interested in this. Next video is a violent video 8 times in a row. And so again, and if you read the Meta press release for teen accounts, they say, no, your kids are not going to get violent videos. If you're a parent that has set up parental supervision, you don't get told your kid is getting violent videos. And the other thing that I found that was really sort of in this realm exceptionally distressing is that a teen could easily accidentally end up in eating disorder or suicide and self-harm content. That if you start typing in, I want to be, Meta will offer you accounts that are called I want to be thin and variations on that. And if you look at those, you see the kind of content that when I talk to people that have survived from eating disorders, it's like recipes, the people that are too skinny, people that are kind of overweight, but it's a fire hose of that. And once you watch that, when you go back to search or you go to Reels or you go to other parts of the product, that fire hose continues because Meta noticed that you watch it and so believes you want more of it and doesn't give you any tools to say, please stop, no more.
So then what happens if a teen is seeing something really shocking and they want to report it? Then what happens? Because I have personally had a message on Facebook that was horrifically abusive by someone extremely unwell, and I reported it, and then it came back and said it doesn't violate their community standards. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because surely some of this abuse would fall short of community standards. But what is happening with the reporting of this content? Because it seems to just go off into the ether.
It's what it does, right? And there's 2 really meaningful problems there. The first one is the fact that you receive this message and try to report it. Put yourself in the position of a 13 or a 14-year-old boy or girl, and what emotionally it feels like to receive that message. You're alone, so you don't have anybody to talk to or regulate. You can turn to your husband or partner or something like that. And then you hit the reporting option, and the options are so obtuse, right? If you get the language is designed for adults, and we knew when I was first working on these issues that if you want a teenager to use those tools, the language has to match their experience. And I can't imagine that the completion rate, aka how many teens actually submit reports, is I think it has to be like a fraction of a percent, probably. Like almost nobody does it. And then because most people get told, you know, this thing that's deeply distressing to you, that violates you, doesn't break community standards, it teaches them to never report again, because they realize that what's the point of me reporting if something that's so obviously broken to me is they won't act on it. And so, and when I spoke to Adam Mosseri about this, what he told me, what I told him, which he understood, is that, you know, your messages should be a safe space for you. Like the body doesn't matter, because if you think of all the possible ways you can threaten or abuse somebody, you can never write enough rules to deal with that. What matters is they came into your house and they threatened you, and you're saying, this person who came into my messages said something threatening, and that should be enough for the company to take note and let the person know that it's not okay to do that, but none of that stuff is there.
And I think from a child's perspective, how does that sit with that idea of reporting an adult? That seems like it wouldn't be a natural fit for a young person to do. Any thoughts on that?
No, absolutely. We studied, when I was managing these issues, we talked to teenagers, and we found that most of them don't like even click report in the first place, because they're worried that they're going to get in trouble or they're going to get somebody else in trouble. So you have to even change the name of that button so that teenagers will use it. And we did that. When you change the button from report to, can you help me with this? Or I don't want to see this. So we tried different things. We saw the number of teens using the button go up significantly. And so you have to, if you're a company who cares, you design these products in a way that a teenager will use them. And you see them do that when, for example, in these young accounts, like this is again a 13 or 14-year-old, the first time you open messages, you get a little window that says, hey, swipe up. And if you swipe up, the screen goes black and it rains emojis going shh. What the teenager has just enabled is disappearing messages where drugs get sold, sextortion happens, and there's no record of it. And that should not be possible for a 13-year-old, let alone encouraged with a rain of emojis, right? You can tell when they want you to use something because they make it easy and pretty and playful. And you can tell when they don't want you to use something because they make it friction, multiple steps, hard to use, the language doesn't make sense. And if you do it, like reporting, you get told, I'm sorry, you might feel violated, doesn't matter to us.
It really makes you question it, doesn't it? Because anonymity online, we all know, brings out the worst in humanity, in adults as well, because people feel like they don't have any repercussions for their behaviour. So encouraging that in children is a bizarre choice. There was an article recently that I read that was talking about the harms that young people are experiencing on social media, and if we take social media away from them, that those harms don't disappear, that they still exist in the real world. Things like bullying, things like seeing pornographic images or that sort of thing. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, I think that the question that you always have to ask about social media is what role does it play in the harm? So one example, and when you talk about bullying, is if you're in a school and somebody comes up to you and tells you, I'm going to make sure you never get invited to any party ever again. It's very distressing in the moment. Maybe a few people heard it, and then it disappears, and that's as big as the audience gets, right? And it's exceptionally distressing, and that will always happen. On social media, if one of the cool kids in school leaves a comment that says, I am going to make sure that you don't get invited to any party ever again, everybody in the school, plus a bunch of other people, are going to see it over time. It gets published, promoted, it's persistent, and you have no recourse. Because again, reporting is broken, you don't get any tools. So in the case of social media, bullying is worse also because you're on your own when you're experiencing. And that's why you read, and there's been too many cases of kids committing suicide because of how bullying plays out through social media. And sometimes it has an in-person component, but social media makes it worse and has a responsibility to make it better because they could. They're right there. They could help the teen dealing with the issue, but they don't. When you think about things like body image content, it's really different when you look at a magazine or look at a movie and you kind of gonna walk away from that. There's kind of like a finiteness to the experience, to having a custom feed where you get a fire hose of thousands and thousands of images. And so that kind of tailored, designed to grab your attention with no effective tools to knock you into different topics, no effective tools to limit the amount of time you spend online, is really different than the harm in the real world. And when people say the harm is the same, it's only the same by name. And really what people need to do is they need to understand it in practice, because in practice it's really different.
On your point of bullying, again, back to those videos, because they were really quite shocking to me. There was one video of that young girl, I don't know how old she was, she looked to me about 9 or 10 years old, who was saying, if you think I'm cute, comment to yellow or red heart. If you think I'm okay, comment to yellow heart. If you think I'm ugly, comment to blue heart. And this is a child, and the comments are blue heart, team blue heart, with thousands of people liking that. And then that audio being used for other young girls asking the same thing on social media and having middle-aged men comment on that. And to me, that is just bullying on another level. Imagine being 10 years old and having the internet tell you that you are ugly, grown men telling you that you're ugly. It's shocking.
Absolutely. It's like they're either telling her that they're ugly, or there's like, oh, I'm 25, do you want a boyfriend? Or I'm 62 with red hearts, And then the other ones, I don't know if you notice them, they're the ones that say trade.
I saw that, but I didn't know what that meant.
So that is trading nudes, sometimes for money, and it's the entry point to child pornography.
Oh my God.
One of the other things on those videos you sent, Arturo, was the children were very young, and parents may be unaware of how young children are participating in this and how viral they can get with copying songs or seeing someone else do it and you do a version of it. What are your insights about the age of these children, particularly the young girls?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's two things there. One came up a moment ago that I think is important to name, which is in a world where the product is saying going viral is what you want, what you aspire to. It's good. It's what gets you free stuff and money and all the things. And then shows you a girl that asks to be rated, that red heart, blue heart, yellow heart video. Did you notice how many views that video had?
Thousands. Or was it in the millions?
1 million.
Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
so Facebook is then pushing that out far and wide.
Exactly. Right. And this everything we're talking about is product design. Then another girl sees that, right? And hits the button that copies the trend very easily. And she finds that if she lifts her shirt a little bit, she's going to get 250,000 views. And there's a second video of a girl who copied that behavior. She looks to be like 7 or 8. She has like a Stitch doll that she shows up in most of the videos. Most of her videos don't get any views. But the ones where she lifts her shirt up and asks to be rated has 250,000 views. And what that does, right, it normalizes the behavior. It rewards it. And at that point, when you combine that with the fact that there's all these little girls, the second point, right? When you start looking, Instagram recommends to you these feeds of kids that are like 6 or 7 or 8. They even say their names and their ages, and they put their ages on screen. And it's taking that kid that's 7 or 8, giving them a trend to copy, they're pushing that out to men that are sexually rewarded by that and who leave comments and make the thing go viral. At that point, it's Instagram that's the groomer. Like, what do you call somebody that takes a little girl, teaches her to expose herself, and puts it in touch with like men that are interested in her sexually, right? And that's the product design. This is like the way that the thing is working.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of parents' worries. That's something that can start out quite innocent and explorative from a child's point of view. Because of the way the algorithmic feeds work, it seems to be perfectly set up to lead for harm and just addiction on content. What are your thoughts on that, Arturo?
When everything in the product is designed to increase the amount of the time that's spent on it, people spend on it. And there's no effective features to balance that out, then you have addiction, right? And I spoke to a kid who was a survivor of both eating disorder as well as grooming. And this was a boy that talked about that when he put out a video and it didn't get 100,000 views, he felt there was something wrong with him. But he knew that if he lifted his shirt up, he would get the views, right? And so the thing to look at here as a society is how the company responds to these issues. Because I don't know a good reason for the video of a 13-year-old to go viral. Like, does any 13-year-old need their videos to have millions of views with the bullying, attention, harassment that comes within that? Unless you have built a really thoughtful product where it's actually the parent managing the account and they're dealing with it. But that product is not there. The kids will say account managed by parent on their description, but there's no evidence as a real parent dealing with it, which you would want to build thoughtfully because this is exploitation of minors, right, of little children. And so the design is addictive. There's no safety measures to protect kids. And then when you approach the company about this, they really are like, I mean, most kids have a great time. And you're like, no, your job is to understand the harm as experienced by teenagers. Your job is to understand these little girls. Your job is to seek out the kids that appear to be under 13 and have a proportionate, thoughtful feature that says, can you go get your parents? I just want to make sure that they're really there and verify them, right? All this stuff is very manageable. The harm could be very effectively reduced in a very short amount of time if it was a priority for these companies. And it's the fact that they choose to minimize the harm every time there's a good story or a report, or you hear of a child dying. It tells you everything you need to know about who they are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, he apologized at a US Senate hearing to the parents whose children had taken their own lives due to, sexual exploitation via social media or cyberbullying. And Mark Zuckerberg said in his apology, he said that studies did not show a causal link between using social media and young people having worse mental health, which is quite a wild thing to say in an apology to those parents and incredibly disrespectful. What do you say to that? Is that just the same thing of that internal hype that seems to happen in these companies of, hey, the research that we have done doesn't prove it, so it's not a problem? Is that what's going on?
No, what's going on there is that Mark chose to set up a bar that's unfeasible. Nobody can jump. It's this high, nobody can jump that high to establish that kind of causality that he's asking for. Right? You don't ever find that in public health. But if you want to increase usage, if you want to increase engagement, you can test anything you want, right? And you can build any new feature. You get resources. But if you want to do something that helps body image issues and eating disorders or suicide and self-harm or violent content or nudity, you have to build such an exhaustive case to maybe try to build something, right? And so this creates this company culture that disregards harm. And I knew from the 6 years I was responsible for that the playbook is really simple. If you talk to 10 kids and 3 or 4 of them tell you that something's a problem, then because of the multipliers involved, because you're dealing with 1 billion people, it's urgent to go and understand how are these kids experiencing the harm and to deploy something that prevents that harm. We did that with grooming. We did that with bullying. We used to have a very different set of tools around bullying that were measured by how much they helped the kid at the moment that the bullying happened. And we would give feedback to the bullies about this is not behavior in this context, because that's how you work that issue, as you do in real life. I mean, we know how to deal with these things as society. But Mark started saying, addiction needs to have a medical study, stuff that takes 5-10 years to sort itself out for good reason. But let me ask you this question. How many hours is too many hours? Pick one number, just any number. It's not that hard, right? And they know how much time everybody's spending. And they know that there's some people who spend 7, 8, 10, 12 hours a day on it. And the fact that they don't understand that or understand how spending that much time makes somebody feel, which they could easily do, and instead push the responsibility into people that don't have the access that they need to answer those questions. And then you say, well, I'm going to blindfold you, I'm going to tie your hands, and I'm going to be playing really loud music, and now you have to prove causality. It's the same thing over and over again, whereas they could do the internal studies with integrity and care. All it takes is, hey, this bad thing happened to my kid, like the parents in the room of that apology. What Mark should have done with each of those parents is have a top lieutenant or himself sit down with each parent. And I've sat down with 40 of those parents and asked them, what happened to your kid? And let me tell you, for example, probably 5 or 6 parents, their kids died from a choking challenge. And every Friday or once a week, those parents search themselves for choking challenge and find it. And then they try to report it. And most of the time it doesn't get taken down. Can you imagine that purgatory for a parent? And right, that if one kid dies, let's say there's this funnel when you talk about large numbers. If 50 kids died, as it's been, I think, the last time I checked, 46 kids died of sextortion. Those are the ones we know about. It's not unreasonable to think it's been 500 that have died from sextortion, and we don't know about those other 450. And it's not unreasonable to think that 4,000 or 5,000 of them have had, maybe didn't commit suicide, but they had, no, probably I would say 40,000 have had like life-destroying events that we don't hear about that create profound anxiety and harm. The multipliers get really big when you go up that, right? And so every time you hear about one kid or one parent, you have to think that that kid is the voice for tens of thousands or 100,000 kids in a heartbeat. And that's what the company could deal with if it leaned into these issues with integrity and care, which is what we should expect or demand of anybody to whom we entrust our children.
I think that's a great point on the expectation, because one of the confusing pushbacks we've heard from these tech companies that it's just too hard for us to do. And at the same time, they seem to be very good at supplying sophisticated, targeted, age-specific content. So it's very confusing and hard to square that off, how they find this very difficult. What are your thoughts on that, being in the tech industry yourself?
You know, Meta and all these other companies are some of the most accomplished technology companies in terms of their capabilities. You generally don't see like spam, what you think of as commercial spam. And it's not that there aren't millions of people in the world with extraordinary resources trying to create spam. The teams I manage built that infrastructure that stopped spam. With the efficiency with which they could stop spam, they could not be recommending this kind of content to teenagers. And again, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe that these products have good in them. Like I dedicated 30 years of my life to create the environments that I would want my kids and your kids and everybody's kids to be on. But that's not where we ended up, right? And right now, if Mark Zuckerberg woke up tomorrow and said, I want to create a product that doesn't facilitate eating disorders, doesn't facilitate suicide, doesn't put teenagers in contact with adult men by their own recommendations. I mean, you pick a harm and I'll tell you how it actually works in the product. It would take less than 6 months to a year for it to be a completely different environment that was so much better for our kids. But when they won't even acknowledge the concept that there's such a thing as too many hours on that, or they will push things off to parents that parents really don't. I mean, everybody has a role to play. Parents absolutely have a role to play. The companies have a role to play. Kids have a role to play. I'm not a build something that's inert and completely safe for kids. Bad stuff will always happen. But right now, we are getting told, we've created this car. It has 50 airbags so that parents can be safe when you let your kid drive the car. But the car, when it hits the wall, none of the airbags that matter fire, and everything around the kid crumples and could kill the kid easily, right? What are parents to do when the company's promising that level of safety, right? I mean, parents are still engaged, right? And so the company's job is to give a car that it's safe enough.
It's disappointing, isn't it? And on the eating disorder thing, so after watching the videos that you sent through yesterday, I just did a quick little mini experiment on my own Instagram account and I searched eating disorder, and of course it came up saying, you know, do you need help? We don't give this sort of content. And then I searched eating disorder recovery, and there's just thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of videos. But what I think is quite a new phenomenon that exists on social media, is the glorification of mental health struggle. And what I was seeing was a lot of these really horrible experiences that these young people are going through of being hospitalized for eating disorders or self-harm or whatever it is, but it's framed as, here's my journey, I'm doing well, and they get comment after comment after comment, and so much validation of, you're amazing, you've got this, you can get through this, we're all rooting for you, which is important. But I think it adds another issue where young people see this incredible amount of attention and validation on this sort of struggle that, to a young mind, which is very different to an adult mind, might start to think, wow, if I have an issue, I am going to get that level of support and love and attention, which they all crave. So it seems like, in trying to do the right thing, they've almost created a new issue with that sort of content. Would you agree with that, or do you have a different perspective?
No, I mean, I think that the issue here is that again, it bottoms out at them not being responsible and thoughtful about this. When you hear about this kind of eating disorder content, they somebody from the company will say, but what if it's helpful? What if it's a cry for help? That's one of the things that you say, right? Well, is it a 13-year-old teenager equipped to deal with a cry for help from somebody who is dealing with an eating disorder or is thinking about committing suicide? Right? So if you amplify this content, are you normalizing and setting the expectation that if I copy the behavior, the same way the girl copied the video that lifts the shirt, will I then try and explore this as a way that I can deal with stuff that I'm dealing with in a way that might not have occurred to them earlier, right? And a way that if it was one video like that, fine. But if it's like, again, death by 1,000 posts, right? I mean, if it's like 1,000 videos, what does that do to somebody? And on this front, I just looked it up while we were talking. There was this girl who posts that kind of recovery content, and she did a little audio, and these were the lyrics that were in the audio that she posted. Drawn out in Sharpie, where I would take the scissors, if that's what it took for me to look in the mirror. I've done every diet to make me look thinner. So why do I feel so goddamn inferior? And that video was copied by like hundreds of other kids, right? And so that's negligence on part of the company, because you have to sift out, right? And there's ways of doing this, interventions and product. If you go to Google today and you try spending like a couple of hours searching for suicide stuff, just type it differently, think of any way, consistently you get back, here's some resources, here's what can help, like that. And you can totally build that, right? Again, think about what they can accomplish as a company technically, like virtual reality, AI, all these other things, right? But their negligence when it comes to kid stuff, I don't know if you saw it in the report we wrote, one of the examples was somebody like misspelling an eating disorder query kind of by accident. And the AI noticed that it was an eating disorder query. And at the bottom, there was the content getting recommended by search, right? That's negligence on part of the company of dealing something with extremely delicate in a way that has the right balance around things as measured by the harm that teens experience, right? Which is always the ground truth. I mean, if your kid comes up to you and says, this has happened to me, you better listen, right? Even if there's some kids will raise fusses about things and in the way that we all did when we were little. As a parent, you always listen, you always investigate. And as a guardian, if you put your kids in a school or any environment where we entrust teens to, and they go to somebody in a position of authority and tells them, somebody tried to grab me in the bathroom, It's their job to investigate, right? And then do something if the investigation bears. And right now they can't even tell. There's no button for a teen to say, this bad thing has happened to me, right? And without that button, how they can even begin to deal with these issues? It's the product design that's really harming our kids.
That's a good point on the product design, because I think that has been confusing in this part of the world recently, because a lot of the social media companies have come out with quite confusing statements that we've changed everything. We're a different company from those days, and those studies don't, because we've got teen accounts and we've got parental controls. I mean, you've been observing this and involved in this for many years now. What have you seen? Has there been any real effective change by these social media companies?
There has not been. Earlier this year, after they announced teen accounts, I went and tested, which is where the videos come from, 47 out of the 50 safety tools that they built for Instagram. And we found that 30 of them, the 30 most important ones, were either didn't work at all, had been deleted, or you could accidentally circumvent them in less than a couple of minutes. That's when we colored something red if it was really bad. And that's 30, right?
Well, had been deleted. So what does that mean? They announced a feature, then reeled it back and said, we're not doing it.
Oh, my goodness.
Exactly.
Wow, that's shocking.
Yep.
So I do want to get into some practical tips for parents in a minute. But first of all, I mean, given how difficult it is to actually access the correct information and data, because, I mean, without talking to someone like you or without intentionally digging into it, you would look at it and think, great, my teen is absolutely safe because Meta has it sorted. So do you think it's actually possible for parents to even be properly informed when letting their children have social media? The average parent, can they even make that choice?
I don't think they can today, because you need two things that we get in everything else in society, right? One of them is you get statistics about harm that are meaningful and effective, right? So if you can look at cars, you can look at food, you can look at anything that has a safety component to it, and you can establish that there's like processes that verify that the safety is effective. And then the other one is you have independent testing. So you have, for all of these things, right? A car, we don't just go by what the car company says. The cars get tested and get crash tested, and there's sort of deal with that, right? So as a society, when you get your teenager the first sort of go at a car, you know that the car is kind of safe enough because there's independent oversight of that. There's none of that here. And there's so much data about harm that doesn't make its way to parents, because Meta, rather than doing the responsible thing and giving appropriate disclosure to parents about the likelihood that their kids will experience harm, go read any press release, whatever response they do to any of this. It's always minimize, dismiss. It's not representative. Most kids have a great experience in our product. So all these things where they're not talking about the kids that are dying or have had traumatic effect or will experience harm. They keep bringing it back to, well, that kid's doing great, which is, again, as parents, and they have the most amazing PR machine in the world, where so many people heard about teen accounts. And in my testing that was also done by a university here in the US, I did not find that teen accounts provide any of the safety measures as Meta promises, right? So it's a pile of broken promises. But because we use our Instagram and what we see ourselves doesn't seem that bad, we don't have any idea what our kid might be fine, might not be seeing anything bad, or our kid might be chatting with a groomer, and we just don't know and don't have a way to know, and we can't be expected to know as parents, because it's not built with parents in mind, in order for us to give us a peace of mind that then we can give the phone to our kids and be like, I know that there's enough safety there. Independent of the other part that we need to talk about, which is, as parents, what do you need to know about and to know to do when your kids are online in any world?
So given that the data and the behaviour and the choices that we have seen from Meta especially, it doesn't give us a huge amount of confidence and hope that they are going to change their ways anytime soon. So you've spoken about independent testing, but what kind of other regulatory frameworks do you think are necessary or would make a difference?
Yeah, the most important thing is measurement of harm so that we know what's the likelihood that something bad is going to happen to our kids. And that should be regulated because the companies, rather than do these studies, have fired most of the people who do these studies and have put in internal processes. I don't know if you saw the latest whistleblowers for Meta, Jason and Casey are incredible people. And basically what they described was a company that put internal processes to make sure that if research uncovers harm, that is deleted.
Gosh, that's shocking.
Yeah, it's or like the article last week from Jeff Horowitz that a couple of years ago, like 2 weeks ago, I think, that in I think it was 2024, that they knew that for kids that had body image issues and eating disorder issues, that the algorithm made it worse in terms of recommending even more content like that, right? And so this is kind of what we need to know. So from a regulatory perspective, you need measurement of harm as experienced by teens, including intensity, so you can separate out the teens that have the most distressing experiences, because those are not that many by number, but they're so critical. Independent testing of security tools and review of that and auditing. And you want to treat it like you treat money for a company. Harm should be treated with the same kind of measurement and processes to ensure that the reporting is accurate as you do with money, where you have one person that has to sign a piece of paper that says, this is how much money we made as a company. You have independent auditors that come in and look at the processes to make sure they're not over or under counting things. That's the kind of reporting that should be brought to harm and independent testing to safety, things that will not happen unless they're regulated by the government. When nobody else will protect our kids, it's the government's job to do that.
What can parents do? You mentioned we've got a lot of data. We've got a lot of insight into how these people have operated these companies. As you said, a pile of broken promises for several years. What can parents do to get that kind of next step that we need?
The thing that every parent really needs to know is that, and tell their kids and talk to their kids about, is that when something happens on the phone that's distressing, let's say you're like in the middle of a party and you see a text message that comes in and it's embarrassing or upsetting in some way, you're immediately alone, no matter how many people around you have. That aloneness is one of the most dangerous things. To think that you're alone and that nobody understands is natural given the way these things work and the way we're wired. The most important thing for a child going through a distressing experience, a teen or somebody young, is to, the moment that they realize they're feeling it, to go find somebody they trust. It might not be their parents, could be a friend, could be somebody at school. But if you're starting to feel alone and distressed, step number one will always be go talk to somebody that you trust. And that is the most important thing to know. If you're a parent and you really feel strongly about making this better for future generations, contact your local lawmaker, figure out, put them to work to pass regulation, because regulation is the only thing that will change. You know, of the safety tools that I tested, the bunch of them that all worked as intended and were green. There were others that were green, but like there was a little bag of them, were all the privacy tools. And that's because in the US, there was a consent decree against Meta around privacy that created a group of people responsible to making sure that it worked as it was supposed to.
I think one of the things as parents, we're not really used to talking to our lawmakers and politicians. And I think there's a bit of maybe embarrassment about not doing that. But you're outlining really clearly that this is really what's needed now.
Yeah, and so as parents, you know, if you feel you're up for it, please do in whatever way works for you. But the other thing as parents, which is like the most important thing really, is make it safe for your kids to talk with you about anything. Like the thing I tried to do with my daughter and my son as well was to tell them, look, I know the world that you're walking in on. right? And you will see pornography that's objectifying and degrading and awful, and you might not be seeking it out. It might be shown to you by a friend, or you might stumble on it. You might come across people selling drugs. You might come across somebody. So bullying will happen for sure, because it happens both intentionally and unintentionally because of the way these things work. I didn't know when I had these conversations, but I would tell every parent that, like, inappropriate sexual contact is kind of par for the course, and nudes are normalized and expected, and there's pressure because these companies won't do anything about it. But it is a reality. That's a world your kids are walking into right now. Today is a world where they will see things that may lead them to not want to eat. They will see things that are going to make them be so alone that they might consider suicide. They might consider, they will get exposed to sexually inappropriate things and advances and requests for nudes and other things that make them incredibly uncomfortable. Imagine getting that request when you were that age, right? Nobody's really excited about their body at that age, or sharing it, or dealing with this stuff. It's more harrowing, but you do it because everybody else is doing it. And take the shame out of all of that and be like, you know, you will run into these things. I am here for you. I love you. If you ever did something that you regret, and it will always be safe for you to talk to me about it. And don't think for even a moment that this will not happen to your kids, right? If we know anything from all of these studies, is that one or more of all of these things will touch the lives of your kid at some point. So it's better to get ahead of it and just have that conversation. Invite the monster into the room and say, you know, this is part of this time, and let's talk about it, and let's talk about what you would do if you run across it, and let's talk that it's absolutely okay if you get it wrong. I will be here to help you navigate whatever happens. And that's the most important conversation that any parent could have right now.
That's really good advice, because I think sometimes parents wait for the child to come to them if they have a problem, but that takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage to just bring that up out of nowhere about something that they've seen or dealt with that feels really shameful. So making sure we keep those lines of communication open, and that it's brought up by us so that they know it's a safe space. Arturo, before we go, if you had a short message to every platform executive of social media, what would you say to them?
That I know you can today make a commitment to understand the harm that kids are experiencing in their terms, with intensity and severity. To be public and transparent about how you work on it, to invite the smartest people and share the data around it, and then to share your progress in such a way that can create confidence that the products are actually safe. And to please stop this whole PR strategy of telling people that things are safe when they're not, because I do think that's one of the great sources of danger today.
And Arturo, just wondering if you've got a similar message to our lawmakers. In our part of the world, there does seem to be some interest and activity in providing some sort of regulation. We're all thinking what this may look like. But as you mentioned, politicians need to be activated and engaged with this. Do you have a message for our lawmakers and politicians?
Yeah, I think that all of you should watch every research video that I shared with you. Start with the one that kids are talking about their age, and then watch the ones with the violent videos and the pornography. Watch the ones with the little boys and girls who sexualize themselves for views and likes, so that you understand and see the face of the ground truth of what's unfolding for enough of your kids to warrant urgent action. And what we're talking about, if you want to make it safe, is proportionate. It's meaningful transparency so that we know how safe it is. It's independent oversight and testing so that we know that things work. But if companies are not willing to engage on these things in good faith, then absolutely raise the minimum age, because it's not safe enough right now. and the people who are in charge are not willing to make it safe enough. Mm-hmm. I believe this can be done, but without clear, decisive action on the part of regulators, we're going to have this conversation again a year from now, 5 years from now, and then just think about the number of kids and what's been happening to him during that time, and how much evidence we have so far to indicate that this is an urgent need.
I'm not even sure if we'd be having this conversation if it wasn't people like yourself who have sort of broke out of that corporate model to say something, which is really powerful.
Arturo, on behalf of so many parents, we thank you for your work, because I am sure it can't be easy. So we really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time today coming on One Young Mind. Hopefully we can start to make some changes. So we really appreciate it. Thank you, Arturo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to One Young Mind. We're on a mission to understand what our tamariki are experiencing online, to listen, connect, and make sense of this challenging topic, bringing the conversation to the forefront. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share it with someone who cares about the well-being of young people.
We'd also like to thank everyone who makes this podcast possible. We simply couldn't do it without you. Executive producers Flicker Williams and Julie Clothier, editor Luke Johnson, OMSI for our branding and design, and the recording team at PodLab, and our commercial partners 2 Degrees and iHeartRadio, and the team at Before 16. Thanks for listening. Ka kite anō.